Okay. Um, Hello, welcome to our Meet the Artist series. My name is Sophie Wyatt. Meet the Artist is one of our many new initiatives at Young Audiences of Western New York, and we are dedicating our digital platforms to amplifying the voices and lived experiences of the many creative members of our community. I'm joined today by Gaitrie Subryan, one of our wonderful teaching artists. Welcome, Gaitrie.
Hi, Sophie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Excited to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining.
Of course.
Um, so if you want to start by just introducing yourself and maybe speaking about your background and some sort of current projects that you might have ongoing or at the dance studio.
Anything is up for grabs here, apparently. All right. So my name is Gaitrie Subryan, and I am a choreographer, performing artist, mom, yoga instructor, um, new passion of drawing. The list goes on and on. But there, I'm an artist. I'm an artist in that whole umbrella of things, and I'm just grateful for this opportunity to do what I do and to share my passion, my culture, a part of me with the community, with youth, with adults. Um, it's never ending journey being an artist. And I think that's one of the most amazing things you can possibly have in this lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I know we often hear artists talk about sort of their art and their self. And I was wondering if maybe you could sort of speak to how you see that reflected in dance and Bollywood specifically. Um, like, how do you reflect yourself in dance?
That's a great question. It makes me think about like just how I share this part of me with like the community because it's a huge to me it's bigger than just like movement and just like dance, um, and it's essential for me to share who I am with the community and others. I grew up in the Bronx along like the Grand Concourse. If anybody's familiar with the Bronx, the Grand Concourse is like huge, and I loved it because there were so many like different people and different cultures around all the time. And my family was always around as well, extended family, immediate family. And we had music, we had movies, we had food that always like filled our apartment, right? But there was something still missing for me. There was still something missing for me. And I wanted to like know more about like where my great grandparents came from, right? We were born in Guyana, South America, which is like north of Brazil, right next to Venezuela, three small little countries up there. Guyana is one of them. But my great grandparents are actually from India, and in 1910, and I actually just found a lot of this information out. My sister is like huge into like, finding out about our background. She ended up finding this document from Ancestry.com that showed the date when they arrived in Guyana, which was 1910. And my great great grandfather worked at a sugar plantation for 5 years. And that was just really cool to like know. But they originally came from an area in India called Bihar. And like just to know that information kind of like makes me feel so good inside because this yearning that I have for Indian dance, for the culture, for the traditions, is not just through my upbringings. It's part of me. It's embedded in me. It's part of like my ancestors, and we carry those with us from generation to generation. And so I wanted to know pretty much more about this, and it's been through dance that I've been able to tap into knowing more about like my roots and knowing about where I came from and the connection that I have to India. It's just much more. So for me, sharing a part of me connects me back to a part of my ancestors. a part of like where I'm originally from. And so like I urge others through dance, through yoga, through any form of artistic way to tap into that so they can connect themselves to their roots and where they come from, because I believe that most people have a very similar story compared like similar to mine.
Yeah. Sort of like reaching back and developing that connection with like ancestors and old family. That's really wonderful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, have you noticed any sort of change in how you practice or approach dance over time? And also, do you want to speak a little bit about Devi Bollywood, your studio, and how that sort of came into being?
Absolutely. So Davy Bollywood started 8 years ago, and actually, fun fact, we're shooting this on March. No, wait, we're March March 11th, right? Yesterday, March 10th, was the 8 year anniversary of me starting Davy Bollywood. It was an emotional day too. Like it was just filled with so many things happening. Other things that I can't really mention right now, but if you follow me, you'll be able to see them soon. Um, but it was an emotional day, and so 8 years ago, when I moved to Buffalo, I noticed that there wasn't like any dance classes, Indian dance classes being offered to the community. It was mostly being offered in the temple, like the Hindu temple,
Mhm.
and I really wanted to again connect with community, a larger community, a diverse community, um, and bring that to Buffalo. And so I hopped on a call with my artistic director from my previous company, the Sa Dance Company, and she was like, "Well, why don't you start your own?" And I'm like, "I know nothing about Buffalo. Like, even though I went to school here, I went to school here. It's very different when you start living in Buffalo."
Yeah.
And so I just took a leap. I took a leap of faith. I trusted. I had the guidance of, her along with my family, my spouse, and I just did it. And it's been one of the most fulfilling things that I think I can say that I've done in my time, because it really made me take a risk. It made me take a risk. It made me put myself out there, which is not the easiest to do when you're an artist.
Yeah.
um, but then it also helped me to connect with so many people, because it wasn't like I was at one studio and everyone came to me. I sought out studios and I sought out different like places where I could teach, to make connections and to build that network, and that was important, because nobody was looking for Bollywood at the time, and now I'll get like an email like, "Oh, I just saw this thing on like Big Bang. Let's just use Big Bang, but there's so many more like Mirror the Detective and things like that about Indian dance, and that they want to learn." So now that Indian dance is becoming more present in our lives right now, people are seeking it out more. But before, I really had to like go out there myself,
Yeah.
which was interesting.
And that's challenging, like coming to a fairly new city to sort of like start a business and make those connections. Even though you came here for school, like you said, it's a different experience.
Absolutely. It's a whole different experience, and it poses so many challenges and self doubt too, you know, because it wasn't like I was on the mission to create classes when I came here. That was not, I got engaged and I moved up here because my husband works for the university, and it wasn't something on my mind. I didn't think that that's where I would be. I thought I would like continue to dance in some form, but never create my own. But I'm so happy that I did.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And 8 years, that means 10 years is just right around the corner when you think about it.
Yes, we're hoping to have a nice 10-year celebration, hopefully when all this wonderful stuff that we're dealing with is over.
Um, You mentioned this a little bit when the interview first started, but you're a mom and you're also like a businesswoman and an artist, and I feel like those are probably the three like most challenging jobs. And even during COVID makes it probably more challenging. And I was wondering if you want to speak to that, like sort of how you negotiate those three very important roles.
Mm, that's a tough one because what we see on social media sometimes is majority of the time is not what's really happening, right? And so there was a good portion of the pandemic where I shut down and I closed off and I went into depression
Mm.
because of the lack of their, like with work, being able to be creative, being able to tap into my creativity, and then also the demands of motherhood. Because now I'm home all the time. I'm home all the time. And so, you know, it never stops, it never pauses. Mom is home and mom is here. That's what she's here for, right? And so a lot of that caused a lot of personal issues for myself. Um, and it took a very long time for me to find my way out of that. You know, it took a lot of inner work and really stepping away from everything to then see what I was capable of. And even though I'm still battling with it because every day is different and every day poses new obstacles and new challenges and things tend to resurface when you don't even expect them to.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I have found to do for myself is, my own meditation practice, my own yoga practice. I'm a yoga teacher as well as a meditation teacher, but really making the time and carving out the time to do it for myself, not for anyone else, but for myself, is truly important. And so what I try to do is I try to wake up every day at 5:30 a.m. before anyone else gets up, and those 2 hours are usually dedicated to me. And if one of the kids wake up, they usually come into the yoga room and they actually sit with me for a little bit, which is really interesting. So,
Do
yeah,
your kids,
go ahead.
oh, have the kids sort of expressed any interest in dance yet?
Absolutely. They love dance. All of my kids love dance. I guess my little one, Karishma, is actually the one most interested in it. Where if I put on, mommy's a dance teacher, but no, YouTube apparently does it better. um, but I would put on like a YouTube video for her, and she'll actually sit through the entire 20 to 30-minute class doing everything that they do. And she has great focus, and she really absorbs the material, which is really interesting because she's only 2.5. But it starts very early. We just kind of like let it dwindle away as we get older.
Yeah. Well, that's really sweet that they're like sort of expressing an interest in what you do.
I
Um,
think when you're passionate about it and when you are constantly presenting it to them, they gain interest. It's just as anything else, whether it's sports or music, as long as you are excited about it, excited about the things, in art, in music, in dance, then they'll get excited about it too. But it has to be a genuine excitement. I think there's a difference between a fake excitement and a genuine excitement. So, and they'll be like, Mommy, are you going to go teach now? Are you going to teach? Like, and they know that this space here is like where I teach. Mommy, teach now. So it's fun.
I love that. How has sort of the experience been in sharing your culture in Buffalo? I know that Buffalo is a much smaller city than New York, obviously. I was just wondering if you had any sort of thoughts that you might want to share on that.
Yeah, it's been great. I've had people from all different backgrounds, all different age groups, excited to learn the style and also excited to learn about what the culture is about and the traditions and the reasons why we do certain things. When I was teaching on a regular basis, you know, a lot of questions would come up is, why do you do this though? It wasn't just like, show me the movement and that's it. It
Mhm.
was a lot of whys, you know, and I think that asking those questions, and then of course, like giving them the answer, it just gives them a different feeling for what they're doing. You know, they find that students were more appreciative, they enjoyed it more. It wasn't just like, okay, here's an hour's class, we're going to sweat through it, and that's going to be it. No, it was, I'm able to offer you something. You know, I'm able to offer you something, and I'm grateful that you're wholeheartedly accepting it. You know, because I think that it's just beautiful when you're able to share in that capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I know that the end of March is sort of fast approaching and Holi is celebrated. Is there anything that the studio or you yourself are doing to celebrate the holiday?
Well, I wanted to do something, of course, you know, we're not able to do anything indoors, but I would love to celebrate it outside. You know, that is something that I want to do. Hopefully, this beautiful weather that we have stays and we're actually able to go outside and celebrate a little. I remember one time, it was about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Wow, I can't even remember dates right now. um, but we did a class. We did a class, and we ended up playing Holi outside. You know, and Holi, for those who don't know, is the festival of colors. It's like the triumph. It's celebrating the triumph of good over evil. There's an entire story about it if you're interested. But you know, it's celebrating good over evil. You know, coming of spring. You know, the festival of colors. Everything is like, usually you dress in all whites, and then there's powder and watercolors, all kind of sprayed on you, just like in this beautiful festive way. And it's one of my favorites. That and Diwali. So the two favorite, which is two of the biggest, but it's Diwali and Holi, and it's just like this wonderful feeling that it gives you, especially as we kind of start to shy away from these winter months, which are always really hard in Buffalo. Um, you know, just having this coming of spring happening is just, it's just exciting. So I'm hoping that we can maybe go outside to a local park, and just celebrate and have fun and just dance and be amongst each other. Yeah, so that is something on my mind. I was thinking about it just earlier this week, actually.
Yeah, I feel like that is something much needed during like this weather and COVID.
You'll get an invite for sure. Everyone listening can
Right.
have an invite, and we'll send it out where we're gonna meet, maybe like Delaware Park or something, and just like have fun and throw some color around. You can be 6 feet apart too, and just like start throwing color on everybody. Just dress in all white because it's even more fun when you see those colors on you.
Perfect. I love that.
Mhm.
What is it like being an entrepreneur?
It's it's exciting to be an entrepreneur, to do the things that you want to do. It's honestly exciting, but you know what? Every day is also a new challenge. And when you're an entrepreneur, no day ever looks the same. No day ever looks the same. And it's exciting and scary, but it helps you to see how resilient you are.
Mhm.
You know, how you can rise above challenges, how you can solve problems. And I pretty much became an entrepreneur to build something from nothing, because there was nothing here in Buffalo offering that to the community. And I believe that, you know, every obstacle that I face along the way is just, you know, guiding me closer to my dreams of what I want to do. And, you know, there's things that you're going to face. You're not going to be able to be all the things to all the people. You're not going to, you know everything, like the ins and outs, and that's okay. But the ability to want to learn every aspect of your business is what's important. And, you know, the other main thing is like you have to know yourself in order to then know your business. It's like that whole tuning in thing, right? Like tune in and get to know who you are, and then that'll help you guide your business.
Mhm. Had you had any sort of experience starting your own business before you started the studio, or was it just sort of completely a first time experience for you?
I wouldn't say that it was a business, but when I was in New York City and I was, dancing there and working there and living there, I wanted to do something a little bit more. And I actually started teaching yoga classes for dancers. And it was just something on my own, and it was all like friends that came that I would dance with and that, we would perform together. But that was kind of like the onset of things, because then I knew I had this ability to bring people together,
Mhm.
to network, to um, to build a community, because I had that little taste of it. And in New York, I don't think I would have ever started dance classes because there's so many out there. There's so many out there, and I was already part of two, one with the dance school that I was training with, and then one with the dance company that I was performing with as a company member. There was also no time, but for yoga, I was able to like carve out a little bit of time and start teaching in that capacity. So when I came to Buffalo, it was scary because I knew no one, but at the same time I still had like this taste of it, and I knew what I could possibly do. And so that's why my artistic director said just do it, because she knew the passion I have.
Yeah, I think that's good. Um, hmm.
I love food, man. I'll be honest. I think Sophie wants an honest answer here. I love food, but because for me that that really brings people together.
Hmm.
So when I think of like big meals and like having people around, I think of like this giant table, and that's kind of how I grew up. We would have like dinners with like 30 people in the house, and give or take, we're not all sitting at a table, but like it's just this gathering and you're sharing. And I think that food opens up conversation, it opens up stories. There's so many things about yourself as well as others that you can find out. And then I mean, I love food because also I have like such a like all these different tastes when it comes to like food, whether it's like Latin cuisine, whether it's like Thai. I love Thai food. Um, but it's just, to me, it just brings people together, right? It's the gathering. It's the gathering that can happen. And if you've ever come to my house, that is exactly what happens. Even at like a kid's 2-year old birthday party, we would have all this food, home cooked food made, and it would just be a nice way to connect and communicate, because you're sharing also a part of who you are. So we would cook like different types of Guyanese dishes. Usually we kind of go for the Guyanese dishes because most of our friends don't really experience that. And then it just starts this whole conversation, or like we'll share like what we have is like a pepper sauce. A pepper sauce is huge. It's one of the hottest, riri pepper, and and we would share that to those who are interested. And then of course it spikes up this whole other conversation about just different things. And it's just, again, this sense of community. So what I love is food and how it brings people together.
That's great. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about is your podcast. I know podcasts have become hugely popular. And sort of what inspired you to create a podcast? What are sort of the things that you discuss? And also, where can people listen and find your podcast?
Sure, absolutely. So the podcast Beyond the Studio, of course, came into fruition because of COVID and the lockdown and not being able to create much. But to be honest, it's been on my mind for some time. Just with all the different projects that I've done or have, wanted to create, there was just no time to really carve out to do this. And And so it took some time. It wasn't like right at the beginning of COVID that I actually created this. It wasn't until October of 2020 that I finally like kicked it off. Because one of my friends, she had stage 3 breast cancer, and she wanted to share her story. She's also a dancer. She's a flamenco dancer, and she also does hip hop. And she wanted to share her story, so other people could, listen and take better care of their bodies, because even as dancers, we know so much about bodies, right? But when it comes down to it, we don't always pay attention to every little thing. So she wanted to inspire others with her story, and she didn't really have a way to put it out there. And so, well, I was like, I'm kind of playing with an idea. I have nothing. Like, I literally had nothing planned to kick off a podcast. No title, no like follow up interviews, nothing. And so, and even like a target audience, I was like, who am I going to share this with? Kind of idea. So I was like, let's just do it, and whatever happens, happens. So I trusted the process. That's a key thing right now for me, is to just trust the process and not force anything. And so after we completed her interview and I started the post editing stuff, kind of post production aspect of it, with listening to her story, kind of gathering like materials from her, photos, bios, and start to kind of really bring it in and narrow things down of where it was going to go. I started asking the questions, well, who is this going to be geared towards? Who's my next interview? Because you kind of have to now have the lineup going. And what's my mission? What's my purpose for doing this? And when I started asking those questions to myself, they started coming. And when I say they started coming, it was like literally a ton of bricks started hitting me, like boom, 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 you got this. It's going to be okay. And beyond the studio, I was like, well, I don't want to just be dancer focused, because that's not who I'm trying to aim for. I'm trying to gather stories from all artists, because all artists have stories that they can share to inspire and influence others. And so beyond the studio literally means beyond, whether it's like a dance studio, whether it's like a photography studio, whatever it may be. And the target was, to just captivate audiences, just as we would on stage, just as we would in an exhibit, or a gallery showing, whatever it may be, or a musical performance. So for me, that's where I aimed for. And then I started making a list. Who am I going to interview? Who am I going to interview? All my friends, because all my friends are artists. So I have like I think till the end of April pretty much booked out, which is nice to have at least like all of my friends who I can share their stories, and then it connects me closer to them. Mm-hmm. Right? Because there's so much about our friends that we don't know, especially when they're going through struggles and hardships and difficulties. But being able to tap into it and to hear their story and provide them a platform where they can speak, openly, comfortably, freely, that's important.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of advice or insight that you might offer someone who's considering just learning Bollywood or learning to dance in general?
Do it. Just do it. Same thing that my artistic director told me. Just do it. Take the risk. And honestly, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is like, you're not going to look like anybody else. You shouldn't look like anybody else, because your body, the way you move is different, and that's okay. I think that's one of the biggest things, in dance in general, because you can't always fit the norm of what everybody else wants you to look like. Once you try to do that, you're not being true to yourself. So just honestly, just take the risk, move. If I could say anything, is just move your body and get comfortable with the way how your body moves, and don't feel like you need to look like anyone or anything out there. We're so peer pressured by what we see on social media and TikTok. My God, TikTok, whatever. but we really need to just kind of like tune in and just connect with ourselves. And that's actually something I do on the podcast. In the beginning, we take a moment to tune in to ourselves and to feel our heartbeat, to feel how our breath is moving, to feel where we're holding energy, where there's tension. The more you're able to tune in, the better you are to understand yourself.
Yeah. Have you, in terms of like sort of connecting and tuning into yourself, have you ever sort of noticed that moment with a student where you can just tell like, oh, they're finally getting it, they're making that connection? Have there ever been sort of those epiphanies and
I would say that, with teaching as a teaching artist online, I definitely cannot because it's really hard to see that when you're teaching an online class. But in the past, I have seen that. I have seen that with students where they finally get something and they get excited about it. You can see it in their face. You can see them trying it a few extra times, but not in the sense of like, I'm doing it wrong, but more like I'm so happy I got this, or I'm so happy like I'm gonna just do it like 10 million times, So you can definitely see that, and you can feel that energy. I feel like you can feel the energy shift in a person when they finally have something that they're happy with.
perfect? Well, thank you so much for being part of Meet the Artist. And thank you so much for sort of continuing to share your art forms and your talents with Buffalo and Western New York. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This is truly exciting to be part of, and I'm really grateful for all that Young Audiences does, for all the lives that you are able to enrich, and the youth that we're able to connect with. It means so much to have.